go, Finney.
All right, Freddy Krueger stars in a Black Phone sequel. Lucky us, huh? So that's pretty much what this is. It is a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel inside a Black Phone sequel. Did it succeed? Well, we'll see. So when I heard that they were going to do a sequel to the first Black Phone, I thought, why? There's no particular reason to do this because the first one ended very cut and dry. There was like, all right, story's done. There's nothing else to tell. But, you know, money is money. So they're like, oh, well, it was successful. So let's make another one. And this one, you can kind of feel they were maybe like staring down the barrel. Like, oh, we got to try to make a sequel to this. How are we going to do that? And they watched the Nightmare on Elm Street films a little too much and pulled directly from that. And we got this. So the story of this one, it takes place a couple years after the events of the first one, where Finn is still dealing with the events of the first film. But now Gwen is now seeing all of these like flashbacks in her dreams of these kids that were murdered at a youth camp up in, Colorado, because it takes place in Colorado, just like the first film. But now it's all snowy. So they decide to go there and try to solve this mystery. And while they're there, they start seeing images of the grabber, and they can't tell if it's real or if it's a dream. So right off the bat, I would say performances were really good. They're really solid, especially from your two leads here, because they've definitely, you can tell they've definitely matured as since the last movie, which was like 4 years ago, which is already nuts. So, but they do a very solid job in their performances. With Gwen, you actually feel like, okay, something, is happening and it's really affecting her quite badly. And then with Finn, he's still dealing with all the events of the first film. And as a result of that, he's kind of become a lack of a better word. I mean, he's smoking pot. He's kind of being like almost like a bad boy. And it's changed him. It's very much changed him. And Gwen is seeing that. And she's very concerned for him because he's basically become a complete 180. I mean, if you go back to the first film, he was very much just someone that was trying to get by, didn't want any confrontation. And then after it, I mean, the beginning of this movie is he's beating up a new kid. And it's like, oh, well, you're now, 4 years later, you're now just an and so I like how they've definitely matured. They've definitely said like, okay, so it's not like, these kind of events, you can't just go back to normal. It changes you forever. And, I really like how it feels like they are dealing with it. And also the snowy atmosphere with this movie, it was a nice touch. I mean, you go from something like, the grabber's basement, which is very claustrophobic because it's just the basement. It feels like at times it's a one place film where it just takes place in one film, a bottle film. It takes place in one film. But with here, it's in a snowy youth camp. So it kind of feels like a little Friday the 13th, but in a snowy kind of setting. So I really like that, especially that it takes place in Colorado. So, that's pretty cool. Now on to the bad. I mean, I've said it multiple times, so it's going to sound like a parrot, but this reminded me a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street to the point where it's kind of thrown in your face. I mean, there are times when, Gwen is attacked by the grabber in her dreams, and then in the real world, you just see like her struggling and fighting, but there's nothing there. So it's like it's kind of like this, but all right, let's go. To then they just up the ante on that until you get to the climax where it was like, oh, you're pulling a lot from this particular Nightmare on Elm Street film. And I won't spoil what they do, but if you see Nightmare 3, you pretty much know what is going to happen at the end. So I was like, oh, okay. So I don't mind them trying to mimic what that series did, but they do kind of shove it in your face a lot to the point where you cannot ignore it. Even if you've never seen like the Nightmare on Elm Street films, you would probably have this mentality of, why does this feel like a rejected Nightmare film? And if you've seen all the films, which I have, it was very much like, oh. And even when like I texted like some friends about it, and I was like, did you catch that? And they're like, oh yeah, you have to be blind not to miss it. So I don't mind them trying to mimic that. It's just they did it way too much. And the other thing that I was really puzzled about and still had this question at the end of the film was, why was this needed? I don't feel like this was needed. While it is cool to see a backstory to Gwen, because this very much became her film, where with the first film, it was Finn the whole time. But with this one, it's on Gwen. I mean, we get to learn a little bit more of why she's seeing these things, why her, and why does she feel the need to go and do this? Because that was one big problem I had, was she's the one that sees all these kids at this youth camp, and then she tells Finn, like, no, we got to do this. And Finn at first is just like, no, like, why do we want to do that? That is so stupid. And I'm like, yeah, he's kind of got a point, but she's also dealing with the fact that she sees these things, and also she's sleepwalking too. And so you want it to stop. So, you're in this like weird predicament on that. So at the end of the day, I liked it, but I still had a bit of issues. There were times during it where I was thinking this wasn't needed, and the whole Elm Street aspect to it was kind of at times like jangling keys in front of your face. Like they just stood there in front of you, and then the movie's going on, and then every time something reminded you of that film, it was like pulling and jangling keys in front of your face, and then they went away for a little bit. But then every once in a while, you just hear that kind of like swish of keys. It was kind of like this. And while the grabber's backstory, because we get a backstory to him, is kind of interesting, I liked it better when we didn't know anything about him. And that's much like The Strangers, where there's no background. It's just, the whole message, why are you doing this? Because you were home. And it's like, that's terrifying. And with the grabber, we just get like, yeah, he just likes to kidnap and murder kids. That's that. And even with, I keep comparing it to Nightmare, but even with Nightmare, it was just like, all right, we understand why he's doing this, but we don't need any more backstory to that. And the more backstory we got to him, the less interesting he kind of became. And it's kind of the same thing here, where I'm like, okay, it's interesting, but it's not needed. Now that mystery and mystique of him is now gone, because I know how he did this, why he started doing this. And it's like, I don't really care. So, while the film has some faults, there's still enough in here from the cool imagery, the very solid performances, and enough horror, I would say, to keep people entertained. So I would give this about a mid-average, where it is flawed and has issues, but at the end of the day, I walked out more liking it than disliking it. So average it is, and average it will stay. Now, do we need a third movie? No, we do not. We do not need another movie. And yeah, I hope they don't.
vengeance is mine.